Ryan La Sala, welcome to Head on Fire. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, you have been on just this roller coaster of big media appearances. You recently lost an award at Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble.
huge.
You were a 17 magazine book club pick, and now you're here, which really is it's the pinnacle of all of those, truly.
My star, it's rising. And I know that because I'm looking at your face live and in action. Whereas prior, we were just like TikTok friends. So this is the first live conversation we've ever had. But I feel like you have been talking to me nonstop for months at this point. So I can't
I
wait to get a
do.
word in edgewise.
I do talk a lot. I am very sad that I do not see any witchy potato heads in the vicinity. That is honestly giving me a little
Yeah.
grief.
I'm so sorry. I'll go get her later if you want me to go if you want her to make an appearance. This is the
She's
Nugget
actually
Witch.
not in your home anymore. I did steal her. But so I want to go ahead and
She's
jump
yeah.
right in to talk about you, your work. Tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Ryan La Sala and I am a horror author. I write books for teens, really for everyone, but they're YA books. They focus on spooky, queer, surreal themes, and my catalog is sort of a little bit of stuff for everybody. There's fantasy, there's contemporary, there's cosplay, but more recently, I'm edging into the horror space with my first horror novel, The Honeys, which is, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about, but came out in October of last year and is being adapted into a feature film, which I'm really excited about. So that's coming up. And I've got my next horror novel, Beholder, which, Don, I have to send you a copy of. I told you I would. Yeah, I
Yay,
will. Okay, I'm
please.
glad. I'm glad that this is a good reminder because I'm heading to the post office after this. But yeah, my next book, Beholder, comes out in a few months. It comes out on October 3rd, upcoming October 3rd.
Yay, I'm so excited. I did get an opportunity to read The Honeys, and I love it. There is something so intrinsically queer for some reason about a camp setting. I have no idea
Mm-hmm.
why. I mean, not just because it's camp.
Camp. Right.
Do you find that to be true? Is that something true for you? Because I can't think of a more iconically like queer teen film than the movie Camp. Like, what is it about summer
Mm.
camp and that setting specifically that feels so interesting and queer?
Summer camp and, to a further degree, sleepaway camp are the Olympics of reinvention, honey. Let me tell you, when I stepped foot out of school for the summer, leaving behind all of the people who knew who I had been, and I then stepped into like this like summery world where I got to put on like a uniform. Actually, I never wore a uniform. I always wanted to wear a uniform. There were no uniforms involved in my childhood, but imagine me, right? Like stepping into sort of this like summery arena full of all these people from all over the place that have no idea who I am, which means I am tasked with deciding who I am and telling people who I am. And for a lot of queer kids, oftentimes it's these arenas of reinvention where, in an attempt to sort of invent someone cooler or better or more enhanced, we actually kind of come home to ourselves. And so that's why I think summer camp is such a like a queer experience. And I mean, of course, also there's being roped into musicals and doing like, sing-alongs and all of that stuff, which queer people are just like much better at. So it's specifically designed to like give us the advantage, I feel like. But yeah, that's my answer.
I love it. I love a camp experience. I didn't go to something like what is in the Honeys, that kind of iconic go off into the woods, because I'm from the woods. I'm from a tiny
Mm-hmm.
town in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get to go to theater camp because I'm a theater kid.
You
Oh man.
stop.
That was where I met my first gay person, and then my
Yeah.
second gay person, and then my 37th gay person. and you I mean, it caused a lot of like weird feelings inside of me because I was also wrestling with a lot of like internalized homophobia and,
Sure.
I'm definitely going to hell and all of those fun kinds of feelings, but also like you said, this sense of homecoming. And you write so gently about the queer experience and about how camp settings are kind of some of these first places where queer folks get to just fully embrace all the facets of themselves, which is so
Mm-hmm.
important to the audience for something like The Honeys, that young adult
Mm-hmm.
audience. How did you come? Because this is so, and I do not want to sound like I am kissing your ass in any kind of way, but how did you come to the decision that the protagonist, Mars, their fluidity of presentation, their fluidity of identity was in and of itself a superpower?
So I've always been a believer that queer people have sort of this like enhanced human experience. And I have always felt like my queerness is a superpower. I love being out in the world and seeing somebody else who I can like detect as queer. And I feel like I'm in like X-Men. I'm like, you and me both. Like we've got the X gene, right? Like we can speak and we can sort of see a whole different dimension to the world. And so when it comes to crafting narratives with queer characters at the heart of them, I'm a firm believer that no one's queerness or sexuality, or really any marginalized identity, can simply just be commonplace. It's not just something that we throw onto a character to like check a diversity box. The way that
Mm-hmm.
I move through the world and the way that my queerness sort of serves as a prism by which like my world refracts into me is very specific. And therefore, for a character who's dealing with like unimaginable horror, it's going to absolutely change the choices that they make and even the choices that they have. So Mars being gender fluid is so important to the story because the story deals so much with Mars pursuing the Honeys. The title of the book is The Honeys. It's this group of girls that's in the novel that are like high femme, like really sort of like highly prioritized in the camp's hierarchy. And Mars thinks that they have something to do with his sister's death because she was being initiated into becoming one of the Honeys. But I contend that if Mars was straight, or even if Mars was like simply like a cis gay kid, the book wouldn't work. That character
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't make it as far as Mars. And that's because what ultimately allows Mars to see what's going on is because Mars has always had to kind of straddle like living in the world that is made out of what everyone wants to see Mars as, which is just this boy, and what the
Mm-hmm.
Honey sort of allow Mars to be, which is everything else. And it's only because of that sort of like induction process that Mars is able to kind of see past, their own performance of gender into what they're hiding, which is the whole point of the book.
I I mean, I'm a homosexual millennial of a certain age,
I
and
heard
I
that
was
about you.
very. The rumors are true.
Oh my god, confirmed.
Confirmed. I'm a confirmed bachelor, except I'm
I heard.
very married. Anyways, so but I was very obsessed with the Honeys in your book. I mean, just of course, why not? I mean, they're
Mm,
the title characters, right? But they seem to scratch a very specific itch for a very specific kind of 90s kid who
yeah, I
saw
think so too.
Clueless and The Craft and wanted that to be in the same world. Like wanted
Yes,
those girls to go to school together and to be friends in the same group and to be doing the same thing. Like I wanted Cher to have powers and I wanted Nancy to be like a femme, you know, I wanted Nancy to serve cunt in a real bad
right.
way.
Oh
And
my
like
god, no,
she did.
truly.
But like
In her way.
that it scratches that itch so good.
I mean, so same. I had all of these like touchstones of like queer
Mm-hmm.
culture or like, like female power, right? And I similarly was always like, I want to have a like okay, let me put it this way. Whenever we have like powerful girls, they have to be like dark bitches, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
Jean Greys of the world. And I love on like the Wanda Maximoff, right? Like they always sort of edge into this territory of like incredibly powerful but like witchy, right? And that's fine. That's all cool. I like that too. But I similarly like I'm like, how come we can't give like the popular, like the pretty girls power? Like where is like their undeniable ability to kind of like manifest what they want? And the answer to this for me, where these wires do cross, is Sailor Moon. I had Sailor Moon as like this really iconic high femme, high power. She's a cleric basically in like the world of like D&D, and I was obsessed with her, and I couldn't find anything else where someone's femininity did not somehow dissolve their ability to be like powerful, right? In like a material way.
I really love those references. I'm a massive comic book fan. Jean Grey is actually my favorite comic book character. Jean Grey, Scarlet Witch, and
Jean
Emma
Grey's great.
Frost. are
Oh my god!
my
Oh my god! I
holy
was gonna get
trinity.
to Emma Frost, where Emma Frost like was not as popular, at least when I was growing up on X Men, and eventually I discovered her, and I was like, oh my god, here's someone who is
They're my
serving cunt
holy trinity.
constantly, and that's
But
like Emma Frost is like she would be a honey, like that's
oh
exactly
yeah.
what
Oh my god.
she would be
Oh,
part of like their yeah.
well, she kind of creates the honey. She has the cuckoos, which are like her
I was
weird
gonna say
cones.
eventually she does have
She,
yeah.
she does kind of create her own. But what you're bringing up is the fact that in comics and in kind of modern science fiction, when people write women with power,
Mm,
men are allowed to have power, and it's just obvious that they're so good at it, and it's so easy for them to
yeah.
save the day. If women are given too much power, they are burdened by it and
Oh, it
shamed
drives
for
them
it and
mad.
must
Yeah.
die because of it.
Hmm.
And those stories of Jean Grey and Scarlet Witch and all of the times whenever they lose control and destroy the world and all of that
Hmm.
kind of thing, those are all written by men.
Yeah.
And
Oh my god.
it's
Yeah.
just such like internalized misogyny. And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
we can't let women have too much power.
Right.
And you're
It'll
just
drive them
like, what if
crazy.
we
It'll put
did?
yeah. No, truly. And also like I mean something that I thought a lot about when I was writing a story that like many would say I might not have kind of the right like personality or like makeup to kind of write a story that is talking a lot about like feminine power, right? And I would understand that claim too. I would ask someone to sit with what the Honeys is saying before posting that online. But I do understand, right, like that so much has been said about like girls, young girls specifically, their position in society. But like when I was setting out to kind of design or ascribe power specifically to the honeys, right? Like they're sort of set up in the novel to be this mysterious, like almost villainous force. And what happens? You'll have to read the book to find out. I don't want to spoil anything, but like that's definitely how Mars thinks about them. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to sort of sit down and analyze what it means to be like a powerful girl. And oftentimes when girls are made powerful, they're made masculine, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
have like the Katniss Everdeens of the world, where their access to power, their route to being power, or like even like brutal, is totally it's giving them sort of like the hallmarks of like what we consider sort of in like the male dominion of
Well, I
like
mean,
heroics.
even modern day literature academics will study the final girl, and the final
Yeah.
girl's traits are a masculine presenting name, or at least a
Hmm.
non-gender specific name. They have to have these hyper masculine traits, and
Yeah.
I'm one of the
Yeah. And they're
boys. I can
always like
fix a
lean and
carburetor. I know what a
yeah.
carburetor is, like that kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah, like I can hotwire this car, and it's going to be some offhand comment like, yeah, what, you don't think girls can hotwire a car, right? Like suddenly we're having like these weird like bandied debates in like witty dialogue, but
Mm-hmm.
and I like a lot of that stuff too. But ultimately, when I was designing the honeys and what power to them looked like, power on their terms, I wanted to kind of bring it back to like basically finding power in things that are typically dismissed because they're feminine. So things like frivolity and specifically like fragility and being like emotionally vulnerable. And again, I won't spoil anything, but like if you're listening to this, if you know anything about the honeys, like there's something supernatural going on that these girls are guarding, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty clear right away. And how to access this thing, how to be open to it, comes down to your ability to be vulnerable enough to kind of let it into you. To use its power, it has to use you. And I really wanted that kind of vulnerability to be something that Mars, a character dealing with grief, has to kind of relearn in order to navigate the story that is sort of set before them. So I wanted there to be power sort of given to these qualities that we typically and pathologically as a society love to dismiss simply because we find them in young girls.
How very Buffy Summers telling the Watchers Council that she's the one with the power of you.
Oh my god. Yeah, maybe so, but I don't know. I've always loved stuff like that too. Even my
Oh
first book.
yeah. That
Yeah.
is my bailiwick. That is my jam. That is my
Yeah,
love language.
I love it. I love it. I love characters like that too. I love when people like it's cheesy and corny, but like the power of
Mhm.
friendship, like those things that we like peddle to kids. Like there's so much to be found in that, especially through the queer lens about like learning how to be part of a community, learning how to
Mhm.
leverage your position in a community so that the community works for you, but you're also working as part of something larger than yourself. Like, and that comes down to being vulnerable. That comes down to sort of shedding armor and not having that super tough exterior, because the thing about armor is that if nothing can get in, nothing can get out either.
You are becoming kind of known on social media. Speaking of me talking at you on TikTok, you are becoming quite famous in your own right on social media spaces for giving the most chaotic writing advice I think I have ever seen.
Is
First of all,
it? Is it that bad?
first of all, Mister,
Mm.
can we talk about a book you wrote in 3 weeks?
Oh man, that's Beholder. That is literally it's the one that I mentioned before. But
Do you
yeah,
sleep?
we could talk about it. So okay, listen. I need to set the record straight. First of all, I know I call this writing advice, but really, I don't mean to give people advice because I think that there is something like I would not ask anyone to reproduce my methods. I don't think they're going to get the same results because I don't think the methods are sound to begin with. And I start all of my advice being like, don't do this, but this is how I did this. Because I think that I'm one day going to be served a lawsuit or something as someone's like at the end of their 3 weeks and they're like, where's my book?
Somebody's in an emergency room with like 4 IVs hooked up to the. I tried the Ryan La Sala
Something,
method.
yeah. I'm going. It's like,
I
don't try
haven't
this at home.
slept in 74 hours.
But listen, my big goal when I quit my day job and became a full-time writer, and I've been writing full-time the entire time, but I just also had 40 hours of my week that was dedicated to like making money. And so eventually when I saw viability with like a writing career, I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. But what didn't like, it didn't fill in with like other writing. It filled in with like cooking a meal, relaxing,
Mm,
playing a video game, like all the things that I had denied myself for like 2 years,
mhm.
basically, as I was doing like too many things too. So my big thing now is that I'm trying to spend my time in more balance so that when I am writing, when I am sort of trapped in these like what I think probably are very clearly like manic episodes, I'm not denying myself like nutrition or rest. So I do sleep. The reason I was able to write that book so quickly is because I had COVID. So I was trapped inside. Which is again, like this is what I'm saying, like don't do
Ryan La
what I do.
Sala's writing advice 101. Step one, get COVID. Step
Oh.
two,
Yeah.
quit your
Yeah,
day
be
job.
like hyper I know. I'm here I am talking about like balance and like then doing hyper negligent things in order to finish book deadlines. So I say advice with like big irony. All right. I hope people hear that.
You, one of the things that I love about the way that you present the craft of writing is through gossip.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Gossip is also a superpower. And you
Mhm.
hear, I mean, my goodness gracious sakes of mighty life, when you see these accounts on social media try to give writing advice, it is always stoic. It is always, I don't know. It's very regimented. I've never heard good writing advice. Like, those accounts that like my entire platform is giving writing advice and they've got like
Sure.
7 followers and have never published anything. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Your writing
Yeah.
advice I love because it's how like how I talked with other writers.
Yeah.
So what is the value of breaking out of kind of the norms and mores of the typical style of writing advice, and how is gossip your own personal superpower?
Oh my God, that's a good question. These are
Thank
like
you.
MFA style questions. So I think that I'll sort of answer this in reverse, in part because I have an answer for the second one, but not the first. But I think that for me at least, I know that I have a really innate sense of storytelling. And I tend to not distrust my ability to tell someone an interesting story. I've been doing that for years. When I would go to summer camp, I was like the funny kid. I was the one that was always asked to make up like funny scenarios for the games that we were playing. I have an imagination. I have the burden of an imagination. And yes, it's driving me insane. and and so when I sat down to like become an author and I looked at all of the paths forward, and, you look up like querying and pitching and blurbs and like all of these things too. And there seem to be all of these rules that people sort of project into the internet, just like you said, where people are like, this is how it works and this is what you're doing wrong. And they'll like talk about things with this like scolding attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I internalized a lot of those rules until I realized that all of these people, first and foremost, weren't getting further than I was. They certainly weren't getting as far as they thought they were. And like second of all, like they were talking out of fear. They were so determined to see some sort of like rule system in place because if you follow the rules, you'll be successful. But that's just not how anything works. And it's never how anything's worked for me. I have been so good about the rules in many arenas of my life, and it has never, turned out to just be as simple as arithmetic. And so,
My writing career did not take off until I
yeah,
stopped caring about the way that things were supposed to be done.
yeah,
I had
yes,
so much wasted time thinking that I could never write because I thought that it was only for a certain kind of person with a
yeah,
certain kind of pedigree,
mm-hmm,
and to get into the world was just so hard. And I had kind of given up on it, and I
yeah,
told myself the year that I got my first big book deal, I told myself at the beginning of the year, my New Year's resolution was I want to get the whole year. I just wanted to get one poem traditionally published. I just wanted, because at the time I thought, well, the best I'll ever be
sure.
is a poet. And which, no shade, I'm a poet. I love poetry. And so, yeah, Rupi Kaur's making all that money. Good for her. So, but I said, I want to just publish one thing. And I just really said, okay, I want to get out in the world. I want to do this, and I'm just going to do it by whatever means. I'm just going to,
Yeah,
chaotically throw myself into it.
yeah,
And like 6 months later, Simon and Schuster's in my inbox.
amazing. Yes,
Right. But it's
yes,
like, I had this really kind of non-traditional entryway into publishing. I mean, most people, again, I write
mm-hmm,
my whole novel. I construct it this way, this way, this way. I do this
right.
with querying and yada yada. And you're very open about the fact that like I do not write the novel before I'm paid to do it. I sell on proposal. I do this. I do that, which is kind of breaking all the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to know what the rules are so that like I don't think you can adequately break a rule unless you sort of understand why it exists in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so I think the education that I had watching all these people do what they do and listening like honestly listen to like many podcast interviews with writers to sort of learn what the rules were because basically I wanted to make sure that when I was breaking these things I was doing so in a really specific way and it wasn't simply out of like naivety to like I was basically looking for a way to bend the rules so that like someone like me would be able to get published. And the way that I did that, an example is like just like you, I sort of set out one year and I was like, this is the year that like I'm going to get like an agent. And I tried querying and I queried a bunch of agents, probably like 100. And I didn't get a single request from anybody. I got form rejections and I even got some nice rejections, but no one wanted to read past the first 10 or 15 or whatever pages I had sent them cold in the first place.
And this
And
was
their
for
assistants were,
Reverie? Was
this is
this
for, this is for Reverie. Yeah. And eventually the result of that was that I went to Twitter and I started tweeting about my book and editors started noticing and I ended up in the inboxes of like editors at like these like big five publishing houses who wanted to take the book to acquisitions or like do an R&R, which is a really big step that's way further down sort of the chain than where I was, but I found a way to sort of circumvent that. And of course I had to go back. I had to like find the agents. I had to like do all of the submission stuff. It's very hard to kind of skip specific things, but
mm-hmm.
those milestones don't always happen in the same order for
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and there's no harm in that. But it's worth sort of getting out of this idea that like if you don't do these things in a very linear order, like you're failing, because that's just not the way that it is for even most of the writers that I know now that are still publishing.
How has gossip become your superpower? Because the way that
Oh
you
yeah,
turn the way that you craft your proposals, the way that you talk about your books online, the way that
yeah.
you sort of embrace the concept of gossip. How is this your superpower?
When you sit across from somebody in like a crowded bar and you're trying to tell them like an engaging story, you can tell when they're engaged with you, when they're really listening, and when their eyes are wandering, when they're looking for whatever drink you ordered. Or in the example that I'll often use is like there's a drag queen high kicking in the background, like something really interesting to like look at. They could be looking at anything else, but they've got you and they've got the story that you are telling them. So I find that when I'm talking to somebody, because I'm noticing this, because I'm trying to keep them entertained, I become like hyper aware of where their attention is at. And if I sense them slipping away from me, that's a good instinct. Or like something in my instincts will flag and I'll introduce like a new element. I'll pull forward sort of the exciting bit that I'm maybe taking a bit to get to in the story. And it's this sense of like sharing something intimate as well, something valuable, something that like not everyone's going to get to know. And because I write horror, oftentimes there's a mystery at the heart of what I'm writing, right? There's something horrific that happens, there's something that needs to be explored. And if I sit down and if I tell somebody a story idea as if it's gossip, I'm automatically sort of like filling in this idea that like there's an intriguing mystery, right? Because that's how I'm framing my story. And if I'm thinking about actually telling it to them out loud, tonally and just like acoustically, I'm listening for the beats of the story that are interesting, that are getting to the point. And that's how I've learned to just summarize my work, because so often when I was trying to email people, I was failing because I think I was adding too much. But eventually, if someone got me in person, when I would talk to agents at events, they'd ask me what my books were about. I could get them interested so quickly. And I was like, do people like me but not my work? And eventually I just figured out, no, they like the way that I tell them about things in person. That's very different than the way that I sit down and I sort of like button up my collar and I'm like over email. I'm like, this story begins in September when the rain, no, shut up. Who cares? Right? Like get to the point. And that's what I do in person. That's how I speak in person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me totally reimagine how to write things, even like scripts for like TikToks, things like that.
Yeah. Wait, you script your TikToks?
Not really. But I do think about them in like a format, right? And I do sometimes write out like, actually, this is a question
Oh
for
my
you
God, I've
because
been doing it wrong this whole time. I
your
just turn on the
TikToks.
camera and hope for the best.
Do you really? You're because you don't like cut that often. That amazes me. I always watch your TikToks and I'm like, damn, the script's good. But
Okay, I'm cutting it because I come in and think, wait, what was I going to say? And I will cut. There's chunks of like 30 seconds of me just staring at my cabinets, going, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, it is.
do you record one long clip in like your phone and then
Yes.
oh okay no that's smart. I hate doing that shit, so I do it over like in the TikTok app, which I know I shouldn't
Oh
do, but like
yeah, no. Well, one, I do it on my camera because I feel like the quality is better, and then
way better. Yeah,
I can play with editing and stuff, and cut it and do my little zoom ins and stuff. But yeah, no, I plug in a microphone and I just say a thing. But I will
that's
say
great. That's good.
I'm while I'm like on my treadmill doing it because I also have a day job and I'm working. I'll be like thinking and I'll be talking to myself, kind of like hyping myself up about something I want to talk about. I'll be like, oh, I think I'm going to go just record this. And then I just go stick my camera up on my sink in my kitchen and I just plug a microphone in and I just say it. But I will say what I find so fascinating about your advice is that
Yeah.
doing those TikToks and reels and stuff and figuring out how to get to the point in an entertaining way
Yeah.
wasn't so much about me figuring out what I wanted to say. It's me figuring out what didn't need to be said.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And just like you're saying, like, oh, once I got into the habit of realizing that when I talk in this capacity,
Yeah.
I'm able to be much more engaging. My writing ability, my ability to figure out what a story isn't, shot through the roof. And it's all really thanks to like me finding success in that venue because I figured out how to keep somebody engaged
Mm-hmm.
because I figured out what doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when I first started making videos, they'd be like 8 minutes long and I'd have to find a way to cut and I'd re-record and I'd re-record. And now I know, okay, I've said this twice. I don't need to say this. I can cut that out. And like it's so much more about what doesn't need to be said than what is. And I love your advice. It's great.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, concision and brevity don't come to me naturally. It's through very similar methods of writing things down, recording myself, uh, basically methods of reflection that I've noticed that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm redundant. I will say the same thing 3 times in a row until I'm happy with the way that I've said it, which is another way of saying redundant. So I just did that,
I
right?
I
Like,
know you're not. I know you are not supposed to like edit as you draft. I know you're not. I know you're
sure.
not. I know you're not. But I will sit there and reread my chapter that I'm currently working on, like as I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to write for the day. I will sit there
Yeah.
and reread and go, wait, this is stupid. Why did I say that? Delete that. I said this 3 times. No. Delete that. And yeah, I think it's just it's helped me. It's
Yeah.
helped me.
Well, this
And
is why I
what my
also,
readers love about my work is they're like, oh, this sounds like how you talk,
yeah. Yeah.
which a lot of people a lot of people have taught out of them. You
Yeah,
know, you'll
right,
take a writing course or something, and you'll get taught how to write in a very specific kind of clinical way, and
right.
they teach out somebody's voice. And what
Hmm.
I love about your advice is it chaotically encourages people to like re-embrace their natural voice, whatever that is.
I mean, that's a way better answer than the one that I gave. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna run now. When people ask me about it, I'm gonna run with that from now on.
Okay, that's fine. We owe me royalties. That's fine.
That's of course.
So you started off writing romantic comedies. You have pivoted to horror.
Hmm.
What do you think is so attractive to queer folks about the horror space?
Oh my god, queer. Okay, horror is the dominion of queer people. I staunchly believe this. Like, queer horror is like the definitive nature of horror, the genre itself. When I look at horror, I see an entire genre concerned with like monstrosity and survival and endurance. And those are three things really that like all queer people, no matter their privilege, have had some sort of like run in with, right? Like growing up, I had to become acutely aware of what monstrosity meant to the society around me because it was often projected upon me. I was a little kid and suddenly I was the thing lurking in the closet, right? Oh, literally. Or like, I was the contagion that could like infect the other boys at the sleepover, or even proximity to me would be like
Mm-hmm.
radioactive. And so I had to learn how to understand what monstrosity meant in the eyes of my beholder, and I then had to learn how to make myself like safe and amenable and like, jovial. All of these things that are tantamount to survival for like young queer people. And this is before I even knew what gay was. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know I was gay, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
learned about it through the dimension of monstrosity. And that's why I
I
love
didn't know I was
horror.
gay either, but my Ken doll did.
Oh, God. But like my point being is that like queerness, like what do you search after you watch like a horror movie, like especially if it's a creature feature? You go and you look up the creature. You want to know about that creature. You want to know where it came from, how it works, how it could potentially attack you. And I think this like fixation on like monsters specifically comes from a place of like almost recognition, because the monster of anything is only the thing that imperils everyone else in that thing, right? Like even the xenomorph has some sense of like the fact that it's just trying to exist, it's just trying to like procreate. It happens to be against our wishes to also survive, right? But I think that's such an interesting debate, and I think my favorite horror oftentimes looks at villains or monsters or other forces that like clearly in their own eyes have a defensible agenda of survival, but it just happens to be pitted against our main character. And so yeah, I don't know, I think that queer people do horror the best, and I think that all horror sort of has a queer element to it, and that's evidenced by the fact that queer people love villains, we love monsters, and we love like the creepy things that everyone else is running from.
One of the things that I like about horror is that it is disquieting.
Mm-hmm.
And really good horror, even if it's not like terribly scary, which sometimes I think that's the better stuff, the stuff that's like slowly sits with you and you mull over the weeks and months ahead, is how disquieting it is. But what I also love is that more kinds of perspectives and more voices are getting to tell stories that are disquieting to them, that are
Yeah.
not necessarily written for everyone. For a long time, sort
Mm-hmm.
of like what you were referencing earlier, there were ways that queer folks, people of color, disabled voices, all sorts of intersections of marginality were kind of told that in order to write a story that could be sold, that could be published, that could get out to the world, it had to be palatable to a very specific kind of reader. And what I like about the Honeys is that the story just does not seem to care, which I'm saying in a good way.
Yeah.
It just does not seem to care about being palatable to that cisgender heterosexual white patriarchal norm. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, we're the good gays. We
Mm-hmm.
are queer as we are queer eye for the straight guy season one.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we are the palatable gays. We're the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, no, no, no. I'm queer as in Magneto was right. And
Yeah.
like I'm here to fuck shit up. So
Mm-hmm.
is that something that you are conscious of in your work? Is there work that inspires you that's doing that? And what kind of hope do you have that this kind of storytelling is transforming the way publishing is going?
Oh God, my greatest dream for myself is that my success sort of serves as the springboard for many, many more queer voices to sort of rise into the stratosphere that publishing considers to be viable. And the greatest honor so far has been seeing things like my first book, Reverie, seeing like the Honeys, being used to rationalize or pitch other newer books. I think it's so cool that we're getting this huge boon, and I attribute it to two things. First and foremost, like, queer people are real. I know we like to say, don't say gay, and all of these other things. We sort of laugh at this thing, but there is this, like, large movement to literally erase the language that we use to sort of find one another. And that's because we're already in the court of appeals culturally when it comes to whether or not queer people exist. We do, and these people are desperate for us not to know that. And because we exist, we have spending power, and publishing will always bow down to money. It's a business. And queer people have put their money where their mouths are, and they've decided to insulate themselves within media that they find to be rejoicing their identities, that they find to be victorious or nuanced or, complex. And so I'm not surprised that people love my books. Everyone else was, as I was sort of trying to make my way to publication, but I was never worried about that. I was always thinking there's going to be a hive of people that are going to be like deeply enthusiastic about what I have to offer. And I know this because when I go out on weekends, when I go to, pride events, when I'm in the world, I know these people. I meet them. They like me. They're going to like this book. And I was right. And I mean, I was actually wrong to the degree, though, because many, many more people than I would have thought ended up sort of resonating with my work. And I'm very thankful for that. But publishing knows that. Publishing sort of sees them spending their money on these things and is now like, oh, like maybe we can do like the Pride by Citibank version of this, where we're like, oh, like it's a cash grab, but oh my gosh, we're still doing it like years and years later. Perhaps this is just a market that we now market to. And lastly, queer people, we have always had to invent the worlds that we want to sort of be within and the art that we want to enjoy. And I admire that about us. So again, reinvention, invention, creativity is like kind of our dominion. It's a survival mechanism. So yeah, I'm not surprised that queer people are simply just writing the things that we wanna read, and then find, like, no one's ever put down my book and thought, I never want to read a queer novel again. They usually read for like the next thing I've written or the next thing that's being adjoined to it via like some algorithm on Goodreads, and I love that we sort of stick with things that we really love and that do us justice. And for that reason, like, I think there's always going to be a market for these stories because we're never not going to be real.
There is a kind of a scary conversation because I know that, on the one hand, we are seeing more trans authors, queer authors, people of color,
Yeah.
starting to publish in all sorts of spaces. And at the same time, book bans are happening all across this country. Maggie Takuta Hall just recently kind of went massively viral, ended up on CNN.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, she, for her book Love in the Library, which
Hmm.
Scholastic wanted her to edit
My
in order for
publisher.
them to,
Yep.
to edit so that they could distribute it
Hmm.
to make it more palatable to these audiences and make it less likely that it would be banned in schools. Are do you are you thinking of that? Are you conscious of that as you continue to write? What do you kind of wish that publishers would do to protect authors, to protect work, and to protect future readers who need that work?
I mean, publishers could be doing so much more, but many people in publishing are doing their best within the
Mm-hmm.
confines of a business that has quite a lot of inertia built into it.
Mm-hmm.
No organization I've ever worked in has been as like preciously antiquated as publishing. So when things like what happened to Maggie like pop up, like, it's horrifying. It's not surprising because even though we're having these really like interesting conversations on TikTok and on Twitter, where it feels like we're sort of all in lockstep. We all sort of understand
Mhm.
the perils of what's at stake. That's a very, very small room that we're all shouting within. And very rarely do those sound waves echo past sort of those barriers. And I, uh, I mean, I have just from personal experience, like talked to many, many people in publishing that when I've talked about like my own anxiety about being a queer author, specifically someone who's like been banned, like I've been told like, no, like we have your back. And I've always wondered, what does that look like, right? Like when push comes to shove, what is that going to end up looking like? Because even in publishing contracts, and this is some business talk for anyone who doesn't care, fast forward, but there are things called like obscenity clauses that get included in many book contracts that basically allow a publisher to indemnify themselves, to basically opt out of being in the courtroom with you should a state decide you're obscene with a capital O and sue you, right? Like as like an author, which is terrifying when these things are happening. And we've seen a few instances, right? So like recently there have been like a few obscenity cases that have then gotten thrown out, which is incredible because it marks a like legislative, not legislative, but like a litigious precedent basically for like how these are not viable court cases. But even Penn America right now is suing a
Mhm.
Floridian school district over infringing upon like constitutional rights by like banning books. And that just got announced yesterday, I
Yesterday.
believe.
Mhm.
Right. And like that's great. So yeah, what happened to Maggie is horrific, and we always need to be vigilant of like the self-censorship that's automatically going to pop up when a business starts to prioritize it's like fear and stakeholder things, right? Like when those things pop up, because they're gonna, and those people are very vocal on the other side of things, but we can be just as loud. And also we're gonna look better doing it because we're hotter. And also like we're creative and we have the backing of like actual art on our side and culture. We're in the Court of Appeals. I said that already, but like the all of this stuff already exists. It's now just proving point after point at like a court level, so that when people make these book ban claims, like they understand that there are repercussions for like infringing upon like freedoms of speech, and people are going to like hold them to that.
Are you concerned about the infl? And it's insane how many times this particular topic has come up in interviews
Yeah.
this year because of how far-reaching the implications are of the technology. But are you concerned about AI? Are you concerned about your own work getting scraped by AI? Are you concerned about how this is transforming the publishing landscape? I know. Are you watching like I am what's happening with the WGA strike and how studios are wanting to use AI to create, to edit, right? Humans' work.
Yeah, I think it's so horrible. And I mean, part of me, the egotistical part of me, the prideful part of me is like, I don't think an AI really is ever going to be able to replace like what actual people can do. And I mean, the testament to that is the massive amount of like AI art that to me looks like hot trash. Like, it amuses me to no end that machines also cannot figure out how to draw hands. They're drawing hands like I drew hands in my like science notebook in 8th grade when everything was the same big-headed like anime style, right? Like, but as these things develop, it's only a matter of time until they're able to kind of like figure these things out too. And obsolescence is like a huge fear of mine, right? When it comes to what I'm able to do. I don't think anyone thinks specifically like me when it comes to like storytelling ideas and that would go for anybody, right? Like the amount of things that you and your brain can connect together and then like put into a story, like it would take a machine a lot of attempts to do that. And a lot of people are going to go with what you put together rather than what a
And if
machine
it's unique
does.
enough, the machine could never do it because the only thing that the AI can do is repeat what it has already had uploaded to it in some
Right,
kind of way
exactly.
and recombine
And
it. So,
yeah,
the fact that so many kinds of perspectives and so many kinds of storytelling methods haven't had an opportunity to exist, haven't had an opportunity to be published before means that those can't ever create them.
it's true. We're on like new grounds for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
My fear is not that AI will ever reach a point where it can adequately do what like the genius of the human mind can do. My fear is that as a culture, we're not going to be able to tell the difference because there's going to be such a pervasive use of it, and because it's cheaper, like that's why it'll be pervasive. And that as a consumer, we'll just sort of settle for slightly less, and eventually that gap is going to degrade and degrade, as all things do when they sort of get like the market share or something. You no longer have to provide high quality things if it's the only thing available. And so I think the actual nature of storytelling like really stands a chance of being like degraded to a really like detrimental degree if, as consumers, we start to allow things with AI to kind of be worked into, you know, our television shows, our books, our art. We'll stop being able to kind of tell the difference, which is why we're at the pivotal point now where like we can't tell the difference. So we should tell the difference, and we should stop with all of these different pursuits. I don't think that they have a real place in the arts.
I do want to give some space to hype up Beholder. I'm very excited about it. It is not, I can't talk about it. I haven't read it. I'm excited. So let's hype up Beholder. It's your next book on deck.
Yes.
What's it about? When can it's open for pre-order? Yes.
It is open for pre-order. So everyone listening to this,
love the cover.
Like what you're hearing,
it's giving me an 80s vibe. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, so you can pre-order it. I will be doing a bunch of signing around the country, sort of moving into that arena next with like marketing, all that fun stuff too. But yeah, if people would pre-order, that'd be great. But yeah, Beholder is my next novel. It's not a sequel to The Honeys. It is a sort of like new horror story set in New York City, and it's about a lot of things that I love, but namely it's about a kid that can rewind mirrors using this sort of like hereditary power slash like curse, he's not sure which, to investigate the common cause of a bunch of very like high profile but covered up murders and like mass killings that have taken place in like penthouses and like art galleries in New York City. It's so weird. It's
I
such
love
a
it.
weird book.
God, I love it. Oh, I can't wait. I am so excited. I'm so
I
excited.
can't wait. I'm so excited
comes out
too.
when?
It comes out October 3rd, and like of 20. What is the year? 2023.
Yeah.
Is it? Is it?
Yep.
I have to.
It is,
The amount of times I
unfortunately, yes.
Googling. Yeah. So okay.
Yep.
So this coming 2023, October 3rd, it'll be out.
Just
and
in time for spooky season.
Oh my god, it. Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, now that like I'm a horror girly, I'm sort of consistently asked to do like horror, like spooky Halloween events. So October is always really busy. But I'm really excited to have like this book out like right before, and to be able to finally like hear people scream. Because if you think The Honeys is scary, The Honeys to me is like a slow burn, right? Like there's a sense of unease the entire time. It's hard to sort of tell what's real, what isn't. But like Beholder is like upsetting immediately, and I don't think it really like lets off the gas for the duration of the book.
I had a quick question that I completely forgot to put on my list from earlier. I consumed your book, The Honeys, via audiobook.
Oh, so
how good. In the hell did you do that? What? How?
Do you want the tea on how this happened? Okay.
Oh,
this will be a head on fire exclusive.
This was not just a narrator reading. Like I got to be the narrator for my last book. Like I got to do the narration, so it was neat and it was fun. This wasn't just a narrator reading a book. This was an entire production that added entire storytelling elements to your book. Like I was in the gym, sir, and I nearly had a back injury from a moment because I read a review. I don't usually read reviews, but I thought, I want to see what people are saying about this. And like the first one was like, there was a literal jump scare in here. And I was like, there's not a jump scare in a book. There's not a jump scare. Baby, with the audiobook version, there's a couple of moments when I was like, oh God, what was that? And it's the audio, it's so rich. How did y'all get that done? Like how?
Oh my God.
Was that the publisher's idea? Was this yours? How did this come together?
I have to give huge props to the people that like produced this and that did the work behind the actual.
I'm going to demand my agent like get that team. Like I want that team.
Yeah, no, they deserve a ton of credit because so listen, like this was the team was put together by my publisher. They work with like a partner on these things. So I didn't have any real say in like what the audiobook was going to, like who was going to be like working on it, which is fine because I like when experts do what they do best, and I think the less I meddle in it, the better. Except I just won one of my books that just won the audio, not the an audio award, yeah, the audio award for like best YA. This is Bedazzled, and so like me and the narrator Pete Cross kind of got together, and we were going to work together on the Honeys as well because I love Pete's work, and we like had a call, and we were like, okay, what if we asked them to do like some sort of like sonic production around this? Because bees, right, in a book about bees, bees very famously have a very famous noise that they make, buzzing at minimum. Like that's got to be in there, right? Like how easy would it be to just kind of like add in some sonic flair here and there? And so we kind of strategically came up with like a list of, I wouldn't call them demands, but like requests. But then, as if we had both spontaneously and independently thought of these things, we kind of pressured the parties on both sides. So like Pete was talking to the producers, I was talking to my editor, and we were basically kind of saying the same thing, so that when those two people sort of reached out to one another to be like, hey, like I got like this request, there would be like sort of lock into place. And they came back and they sort of trusted the vision and had all of their own insights, way more than, you know, we could have dreamed up on our own, to add into it. And the end result is this like really captivating, rich sonic landscape that like I've never heard in an audiobook, and I get
Hate
so
you
obsessed
so much. I hate you so much for that. Like the only other time I've ever had that kind of experience is, again, not kissing your ass or anything, but like Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Whenever
Okay, yeah,
Audible did
I've heard it
that,
recommended. Yeah.
with that like rich sonic environment,
Mm-hmm.
if that was something you liked, even if you're
Yeah.
not a horror girly, the Honey's audiobook version is going to give you that experience.
I had to
And
stop listening to it. They sent it to me to review, and I was like a little
you
too
haven't listened
freaked
all the way
out.
through?
I no, I have now at this point, but like there were moments when I had to stop. Like I was also in the gym listening to it, and I had to like pause it because I was like, I can't blow my back out, right? Like while doing this like
Sir,
squat.
this is
Yeah.
a family show.
Oh my
Blow
god.
your
Well, you know
back
what I
out at
mean.
the
Let me rephrase. I can't have a muscle spasm because my whole body has decided to clench up because something scared me inside my own
Yeah,
head
I
during
did
a
not know
squat.
that was good. I've never had that experience with a book before, ever. And it happened like 3 times with yours. And I'm so mad about it, which is the best compliment one author can give to another, is
That's
saying,
a
F
high
you.
compliment. But it does go back to this idea that, like, there are rules for how these things are done, but,
Uh
like, the
huh.
right pressure in the right places,
Yeah.
especially when you start to kind of have, like, momentum. Like, I'm at a point in my career where, like, I can kind of bring a vision to these people and they'll go with it because in the past smaller scales, I've always yielded good results, right? So, like, because I have that like cachet at my hands, I can do stuff like this now, and
Mm
I'm not always going to get my way, but I wanted to show people that if I do get my way, it's going to be popular,
hmm. Mm hmm.
and that's been the case.
I do want to be respectful of your time, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer. But I do want to ask, and I have
Mm.
pestered you about this on social media, but since I have you right in front of me, I'm just going to ask: are there rules to the light game? And
Oh my god!
if there are, what are they? Do you know them? Do you know the rules to the light game? Can you play the light game? Is there a future version of the Honeys that's going to come out with the glasses to play the
Mm.
light game with the
You
little
want like a
stones?
it's
How can I play the light game, and why won't you teach me?
it's gonna be like
Thank
this like
you.
Hasbro partnership where it's like you
Yes.
were terrified by the honeys. Well, guess what? Little girls everywhere can play the light game like at home, and it's
I
gonna be like a
want
little girl holding like a
the
crystal.
game. I want to play it because it's this weird game that's like Go, but with like rich people cut crystal tumblers
Yep.
and like something that like the girls in the craft would play. Like
Yeah.
it's that, and you're doing this, and there's a ever changing board, and you're Jean Greying at each other, and I
Yeah.
want to play so bad, and I'm so mad that
I
there's no rules anywhere, and I want to
I'm
play.
so sorry. Yeah, I can't reveal all of the honeys' secrets when it comes to this. But what I will say is that the inspiration for that game is a real game that you can play if you just want the sensation of picking up little tiles and putting them on a board. The
Is
game
it
does not have
Go?
anything. No, it's Azul. Have you ever played Azul?
No.
Look up Azul. That's a great
I'm
game.
doing
And
it.
the inspiration for that scene in the Honeys came from me watching my friends play Azul. And I had no idea what the rules were, but I was sort of in the position of watching a very complex game being played between people who had complete understanding about what the other was thinking. And
Adding to
somehow,
cart.
oh my god, yeah. Well, look at that, and then look up Stained.
I'm sorry. The very first
Yeah,
listing is for a game made out of chocolate.
it's not that. It's not that.
I wouldn't mind playing a game out of chocolate.
That's kind of
I
fun
will
though.
I will eat the game.
The other one that you might want is Azul's, like, there's another version of it called Stained Glass of Sintra, which is similarly like you basically are like, you're like a glass person. I don't know, someone who like a makes windows basically, and you are having to like make these like stained glass windows in like
I
a
want to play.
cathedral.
I'm gonna get
They're
drunk and
really
play this
fun,
game tonight.
and
I'm gonna get drunk
yeah,
and play this game and read tarot cards and
you'll love
just
it.
yeah,
There you go. There
yeah.
you go. So
I wanna play the light game and read tarot cards and drink cheap wine and have a
that
front
was
porch gossip session.
quite literally what I was doing when in that group of friends, like in this like cabin that we go to, like when we just like play board games, like that was the inspiration for like Cabin H. It's where my author photo is actually in the back of the Honeys. It was taken in this cabin years before I'd even written the Honeys, and I don't even look like that anymore, but I wanted to use that photo because it
You look
was
exactly like that, Mister
I
Ryan
have
La
a
Sala.
new nose. I don't even have like the same nose. I've had a nose job since that photo was taken.
You are one of those ageless people. You are a honey, so I hate you.
My
First of
gosh,
all,
yeah. The
yeah.
hive is higher, honey.
The
Sorry.
hive is higher. Oh my goodness. Ryan La Sala, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy publishing schedule. How many books are you writing this month? Are you like, is it a novel a month?
Oh
Are
my
we,
god.
are a novel a week? Are we do it? Do you sleep?
I this is the
What's up
last
next for
day
you?
before freedom. I am literally today probably starting my fifth book. I have it all outlined. I have a synopsis that is 32 pages long of what I want to
Oh my
accomplish
God.
in it. I just have to start writing it. So I think literally after this has been such a fun, inspiring conversation that I'm gonna
Thank
take this
you.
energy. I'm gonna
Thank
put it
you.
into yeah. You are so joyful and so insightful, and I knew it. I actually knew that this conversation was like going to get me so hyped up that like I cleared my afternoon calendar so that I could take advantage of the energy I knew you'd give me. But
That's
that's what I'm
so
working on
nice.
next.
You have also been a direct inspiration to my own recent addiction, which is the Ulysses writing app.
I love that app. It's so good.
Listen, I don't know that I would be getting my current book done as quickly. Like I'm gonna have. I listen. It's not 30 days, but I will have written an entire novel in like 2 months.
That is incredible. Do you
Two
understand? Like,
months. Like I'm
yeah,
already. I just started a couple of weeks ago, and I'm at 46,000 words. So I of an
that's
80,000 word
wild.
count, and I have you to blame.
No,
I'm gonna say
no, we
thank, but it's
all
blame.
so long as you're getting your nutrients, you're getting some sleep once in a while,
I
your life is
did
not
I did
deteriorating.
drink an entire jug of coffee yesterday to keep up. So yeah, I
Oh
don't
my
know.
god,
I don't know that
baby.
I'm doing this in a healthy way. But it is maybe slightly more healthy than doing it in 3 weeks. So that's
Yeah. Good,
thank
good.
you
That's
so
what I'm trying to do
much.
too. I'm like debating if I want to document my next writing process because my first one got so much fanfare on TikTok, but I might still, but it's not, I'm never going to try to do a 24-day
Do you have a
book
fancy
again.
keyboard? I
I
got my
have this little like, oh, yours is cute. Look at
thank
yours
you.
with the little buttons on it.
Yeah.
I
And
love
it
that.
also
Oh
has
my
a
god.
10 key.
That's what. Okay, wait. I love that, and
Thank you.
I want the
It's
little
entirely
numeral.
$20 from Amazon. It was all of like $22. This is
Maybe I'll
such
get
an
that. I mean,
expensive
I
keyboard.
love mine. I travel with it. It's like handy to have on like
Yep.
flights and shit
And
like
it can
that.
do 3 devices too, which I love. So I
Yeah,
when my laptop was in the shop, I could program it to my phone and I wrote my little chappy chapters on my phone in the Ulysses app.
dude. I do that, and I sometimes, if I'm in like a really heated debate in like a group chat, I'll plug my keyboard into my phone and
I will do
I'll go
the same
crazy.
thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
you better get ready for a wall of text. Okay, Ryan La Sala, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time so much. Everybody go get The Honeys. Everybody go get Reverie. Everybody go get Bedazzled, which is a fantastically queer book about cosplayers, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal. And
Thank you.
Beholder, which I get to read before all of you, so screw you.
I'll
Thank you
send
so
you a
much for
copy.
being here.
Thank you.